So the next project is about the Lokari project, which was also initiated in 1948 with Itava pilot project. Uh, this project was started under the leadership of S.K. Dev. It primarily proposed was to develop a new township to rehabilitate displaced persons from West Pakistan. So actually in 1947 or 48, after the independence, what happened, like there was a dispute between the people of Pakistan and India, and the partition was done in that era. So in that case, what happened? Like most of the people were displaced from their own villages, and they were thrown out of that villages. And this person, he understood the circumstances or the trouble or the pain the people were going through. So he started a one project where he rehabilitated all the people who came from Pakistan and those who were not accepted in the society of India, and they started to live together in a township which was made initiated by S.K. Dev. The project was built in a swampy, barren land by the refugees, self-help, and government assistance. So, these project was to build the buildings and the centers or the towns for the people who were displaced during the partition, and they acquired all the barren lands which were not of any use by the people and by the government. So they came together, these two organizations, they came together to assist these people and gave a land for these refugees to build their own areas to live in, towns and houses to live in, located around the vocational training center on the highway of Delhi and Ambala. So these mostly were located on the highway of Delhi to Ambala. They've launched a new scheme called Mazdoor Manzil for construction of the townships. So in this project, he also launched a new scheme that was called as a Mazdoor Manzil. Mazdoor means uh, worker, Manzil means aim. So workers' aim is to get a house. Means three basic needs which we get in our life is food, shelter, and clothing. So these three was the aim of this person. So if you get a mazdoor in the Mazdoor Manzil scheme, if you get a house, automatically you will be saving money to get food and shelter, food and clothing also. What was the output that we saw from this project was that training on agriculture implementation preparation. So they started to give some training to the people how to do agriculture implemented things which will help them to get employment and all. And then cottage industry were introduced to them. Cottage industry, why? Because at that time these people were refugees, so they cannot go directly to the government and ask for some employment and all. So these people were told to have some cottage industries like basket making, broom making, mat making, cotton industries, doll making, all these small things to come up with some economic, or we can say some employment generation thing, so that they can get some employment, and these people can have enough food, enough money to get shelters, food, and clothing. Carpentry was one of the fact that they used in this to rebuild their employment. Carpentry requires a technique of doing work on the wood, and that woods can be used for many purposes in house like doors, windows, table, chair, arteries on that. Then it was based. focused on self-sufficiency of for rural come urban in all essential requirement of the life. So it wasn't like just making the people to build up with the agriculture product, but it was also helping the people to minimize the gap between how the rural life is and how the urban life is. So they wanted to make people so self-confident about how to survive in both the condition, and what are the essentiality of life that is required in the rural life and in the urban life. So they, we can say like these both people, they both this project was initiating these people to understand the both the um, uh, aspects of life and the requirement according to the place, like if it is a rural place or it is a urban place, and what are their requirement and how they can survive in this type of requirement. Later this township was subsequently handed over to the government of Punjab after the bifurcation of Punjab, and Nilokari went to the Haryana state. So later this project went on, and later when these towns were built, and there was an issue about government of Punjab that and government of Rajasthan, Haryana to divide the state. So after the diversion of the state, after the new state Haryana was made, so this project went under that particular state. The next project that is going on till 2003 was National Agriculture Technology Project. Actually, this project was initiated only related to technology. So the project was initiated by Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, with the financial assistance of World Bank, and would be implemented with the assistance of manage in 28 state covering 28 district covering 7 state: Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Himachal Pradesh, Maharashtra, Orissa, Punjab, over a period of 5 years. So this project was initiated by Ministry of Agriculture, uh, and it was financially assisted by the World Bank, and this project was managed under the both the organization in 28 state covering 7 different state of India, 28 district covering 7 state of India, where they saw that there is a poverty, or they saw that there is some reasons which where technology can be initiated. So this project went on for 5 years from 1998 to 2003. The World Bank assisted National Agriculture Technology Project, aiming to improve the research and extension services. So this World Bank, they wanted to have some um, um what we can say, some projects that were going to be affected by this um, by the finance, and uh, by research and extension services. So why research and extension services were aim of the World Bank was because that was a crucial year when 20 years has 30 years has passed, 30 to 40 years, and they wanted to know after the independence how much development has been taken, how much it is lacking behind till so far, and how much agriculture technology project will aim to improve that thing. Agriculture technology project means agriculture technology related to agriculture, how these technologies are going to improve the life of the people, how farmers are going to initiate or they want to take up or not, what is the adaptive um, capacity of the farmers. The research component of NATP is being implemented by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research, and extension component by the Department of Agriculture and Cooperative. So all this research was initiated, means the people who were provided the concept who was given by the people to them. was undertaken or supervision by the ICAR, an extension component of Agriculture Department and their cooperators. And the different project implementing agencies PIAs involved in implementation of ITB component of NATPR. Director of Extension. So, Directorate of Extension was one of the agencies that was helping for technology, agriculture technology in this national project. National Institute that is managed means National Institute of Agricultural Extension Management. So, if there is some project going on, then management is also required to see whether the things are functioning well or not. NATP cell at state headquarters, so even headquarters states were given so that people can if they have any problems or anything related to agriculture technology drawbacks or any disadvantage or limitations or problem or issues, they can directly call to the state headquarters so that they can get the um, uh, enough information and solution of the things. Then State Agriculture Management and Extension Training Institute, that Samiti. This was also initiated to train people, how the institution is going to train the people and what type of training they should get, what are the aims, the procedures, the principles, the objectives, the outcomes, the limitation, advantage, the conclusions, the future oriented things should be there or not, as it was funded by the World Bank. So research and extension was the primary aim of was aim of that World Bank. So this institute, training institute, was also implementing all the other factors that was related to the people uh, uh, in getting the training. Then there was also a district level agriculture technology management that is called as Atma or agencies. Means as we have already known that this project NATP was started in 28 districts and in 7 states. So, district level agriculture technology management agency was much required for these type of things so that they can uh, have a good link with the people, ongoing projects, ongoing research, and how much that is effective or not. They can have a monitoring on that. Then extension component terms as in innovation in technology dissemination. So ITD is what we call as innovation in technology dissemination. Integrated extension delivery at district level and is being pilot tested in 7 participating states. So these were the participating state which were given a special component of extension through ITD, and they also wanted to see how much these people are technology lag behind and how much they need to put effort in this. The purpose of this component is to test a new approach to technology transfer. As I have already said, like the ITD was to implement technology, new technology, and how much approaches should be done to them so that the people can understand the technology thing. New organizational arrangement was there, and operational procedures were there. How to carry out the things, like if somebody is having a phone call, like cell NATP cell at a district state level was there. So how to operate a phone, what is the procedure, how to talk, how much to talk, to whom to talk. These all were the operational procedure of this thing. One of the goal is to decentralize decision making to the district level through the creation of Atma as a registered uh, society. So this ITD wanted to know, come up with some facts to see whether the people uh, are able to make decision or not about their own things. So they decentralize Before NATP was a national thing, and there were ICR which was involved, and the extension department of the other state was other organization was involved to carry out this project. But when they started at the district, decentralized this thing to the district level, then it became a very uh, friendly to the people, because district is the smallest component we can see in this project, that the people can easily contact with the directors or the trainers or the people who are responsible for the project, and know about the practices that are going to affect them. And they wanted to uh, officially register this Atma, so that people can effectively, means they have trust in the people, the organization, and they can go and they can have a interact with them. The second goal is to increase farmer input into program planning and resource allocation, especially at the block level, and increase accountability to the stakeholders. So they also wanted to increase the farmers' input. It's not like that the project is made, something new technology is produced, and it is sent to the people, or it is just sent to the people, whether people are interested in not, or whether they are doing or not. We are not even paying attention to that. So they wanted to increase the input, so they wanted to see whether the participation of the people are there is there or not. If it is not there, then they have to allot some special cells in this main is team, or some people, group of people, to see at the block level, like whether they why they are not interested in that. If they if knowing the reason, they can have increase in the people who can fund that project, so that the people will be interested by seeing the money or the benefit out of that. Then the third thing is to increase program coordination and integration. So after the stakeholder is involved, it is for sure that the people will be interested if the things are according to their benefit, and if they are getting some uh, direct benefit from whatever they are producing, or whatever the project is asking for, then they would be getting a good amount, so that they can work on it. Fund would be provided to 28 pilot districts in 7 states to create uh, Atma, Agriculture Technology Management Agency, which will bring together research. So, in this 28 state were which were 28 district which were um, selected from different 7 state. These were the pilot area or the sample area where they wanted to give fund for the people who can get involved in that, like the researchers, the extensionists, the farmers, and the other stakeholders, including the NGOs and cooperative sectors also, to make on the basis of joint diagnostic studies. To so why they were brought together is to get a joint diagnostic study about whatever the how the project is going on, what are the drawbacks, how much they need to implement, how much they need to improve. Extension planning and recommendation for expanding adaptive research to introduce innovation. So they also wanted to have some adaptive research to see whether this research is adapted to the people, and how much this research is going to have a introduce innovation and technology to the people, and how much this dissemination of this all the knowledge is going to affect the local needs and their characters. So these are the 7 states and the 28 districts which were given as a pilot testing area. So we can see Andhra Pradesh, Kurnool, Chittor in Bihar, Muzaffarpur, Moguri in Patna rural, These all things were there. Then each of the pilot district Atma would be established as a register for aim. So at the last, what happened in 2003, the Atma organization was established, agency was established to see the um, was established or was officially or recognized by the government, and to see whether there is a research and extension activities going on in the state to improve the livelihood of the people. So these are the questions that is possible for this two topics. One is about the Tower pilot project, and second one is about the NATP, National Agriculture Technology Project. Thank you so much. So there are in India there are more than 2,800 caste and subcaste with some differences. So if we talk about the correct definition of caste, so Lenberg in 1968 he defined the caste as a caste is a society category whose members are assigned a permanent status within a given society hierarchy and whose contacts are restricted accordingly. So here the definition has already made a clear view about the caste, that it is a society, means it's not origin of a human being, but it is originated from the society whose members, means it have a rule and regulation, like they have a memberships and all. So those who are in that society, they are assigned with a permanent status within a given society. Okay, permanent status here means if they are living, if they are called as fishermen, then they are permanently, they are fishermen forever. Okay, and within a given society hierarchy, or even in that also, even the permanent status, they have some hierarchy in that, and whose con- contacts are restricted accordingly. So according to their permanent status, according to their status in the society hierarchy, they have some contact, and there are some restricted rules and regulations which restrict them to mingle with other hierarchy, other society hierarchy people. A.G. Green has also given us definition to caste. That is, caste is a system of stratification in which mobility up and down the status ladder, at least ideally, may or not occur. So A.G. Green said, like it is a stratification, division in the society, which which is not permanent, and people can uh, take efforts to go up in the hierarchy and come down in the hierarchy according to their status. If they increase their status or if they improve their status, they can go up. If their status has been affected by different things, then they can come down. Then classification of status, caste, according to Varna, means according to the color. They have divided in India. They have divided into four categories, that are Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. According to Jati, means the species or kind of anything. They are divided into four categories. The first one is a region or a local sub classification, including a more complex system consisting of hundreds or even thousands of castes and subcastes. Its hierarchy is more local classified that varies from region to region. So, if you talk about the history of the caste, the Varnas classification is roughly 300 years, 3000 years ago. So, the Varnas, according to the color classification, has been defined in 3000 years ago. That means that this is the culture which is followed in India in 3000 years ago. So the caste system stood for different things in different time periods. So it wasn't a constant thing. So it was changing according to the time period, um, according to the rule or according to their jobs or services they provided. Can't say it is misleading the same thing for last 3,000 years. In the Vedic period, roughly in 900 to 500 BCs, the caste was in Varna system consisting of only four major divisions. These divisions were not very elaborate or very rigid and not determined by birth. So, as the second point here is second and third point has clearly defined that the caste system was changing according to the time period and it was misleading the same thing for 3000 years. So here, as said, like in Vedic period, the caste system was only of four division, and Varnas, according to the color, the caste system was about four division, and these divisions were not elaborated. It was rigid only four, not more than four or not less than four, and it wasn't rigid. Means all the rules and regulation which were followed in that thing were not constant. It could be changed or it can be changed. It would be changed in that time, and it wasn't defined by birth. Where are you born? It wasn't a matter of the caste. The movement across the category was possible and common. Okay, so the movement according to the category was possible. Like, for example, 3000 years ago, if you want to know that it was about the um, Rishi Muni time where local people and the Sadhvik people were there. So if some person who is from a local family and tries and prays and tries to devote his life towards the god, towards the nature, then they used to be uh, transferred into some other identity that was from a common person to a sadhvik, that we call as a religious person or a priest, and then they can have all the uh, facility of that particular uh, caste in that time. So this is an example, normal example. If you talk about the kingship, if a king has a minister and his minister's boy is a person who is in the um, army or the chief of the army, like Senapati, then he was not a Kshatriya, or the minister was not of the upper caste like Brahmin. So, in one family, it become like there are different people belonging to different castes. Like father is from the higher caste, the son may be from the Kshatriya caste, like that. So in Vedic period, this thing was not rigid, means it was not fixed that this person is going to be belonging to this thing. Or you are born in a Pandit family, so you will be called as a Pandit. Or if you are born in a Brahmin family, so you will be called as a Brahmin. But this connotation changed after the Vedic period. These things became rigid, and it was determined by the birth. Membership in the caste includes strict regulations. Like if you are following this, you have to follow this without questioning the society system. Okay, caste membership also involves rules about food and food sharing. To whom they need to share, to whom they give to the share of the food, uh, which type of people, how to eat, and what type of food you should consume. So, caste involves a system consisting of many castes arranged in a hierarchy and rank and status. So, in a particular caste, there are also a different subcaste or some order they have made through which they were signifying the person's status in the society. They have subdivisions within themselves. It wasn't like only if it was like before Vedic period, it was fixed like four division only. But in the post Vedic, in one particular division, it started to have subdivisions, and in subdivisions also, they have many subdivisions. So caste was traditionally linked to the occupation. So now and before it was related to the work we have done or the um, it was flexible, but after the Vedic period it started to be rigid, and it was fixed what type of occupation you are following, and through this occupation what you will be called as. Then past and present. So this was about the history. Now we move on to the present. What does in the caste system in the present society means? So, sociologist and social anthropologist coined many new concepts to try and understand the process of change. They came up with two common terms that was used so often. One was Sanskritization and second was dominant caste. So, um, like in the modern present time there these society has been defined or being elaborated or segregated into different things, and uh, but still people have made that much effort to uplift their status and uh, have a equilibrium balance between the higher caste and the lower caste, and they became uh, like equal in front of each other. So many scientists were studying all this, the process of change that was coming up. So they came up with two particular terms. The first one was Sanskritization, and the second was word dominant caste. So what does the Sanskritization means? So, if you talk about the Sanskritization, it refers to a process where by member of a caste attempt to raise their own social status. So, they saw like some members they don't want to fall in the category of the caste which was given to them by birth. So they started to have some modification in their work, in their occupation, in their way of living, in their behavior, in their wearing style, so that they can raise their status to the another caste hierarchy by adopting what then how they wanted to change their status is by adopting the rituals, domestic and social practices of the higher societies. So mainly they wanted to compare themselves, or they wanted to make themselves equal to Brahmins and Kshatriyas. So they adopted some of the practices that was followed by the Brahmins or by the Kshatriyas in that in the hierarchy of the society to uplift their status in the society. So the practices adopted was mainly what were the common practices that was adopted from these two major caste, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, were the vegetarianism, only eating plants and animals, not going on to the killing of the any life. Okay, wearing of the sacred thread that most of the Brahmins they wear, performance of the specific prayer for a specific occasion and all. Like for death, they have some particular prayers and rituals. For birth, they have for mundans and all. For namkar and chatis and all that there. If you talk about marriage, they have some prayers and all, to make the even to inauguration of the house also they have some rituals and prayers. So these were all things they adopted from the higher caste to make themselves equal to the higher caste and make their status uplifted. So this was what Sanskritization means. Their Sanskriti was means the caste that the people, the group of the people that they were having. These people were trying to adopt the Sanskritis of these two higher castes and wanted to become equal to them. Then, what about the dominant caste? The second was about the dominant caste. At present, these two things are going on. The second one is dominant caste. So, what does the dominant caste means? It refers to those castes which has a large population, as was granted land rights. These were the population those who were involved in the management of agricultural land but were not the cultivators. Okay. They used to hire the labor from the lower caste and the untouchable caste for the leveling and tending of the land. So dominant, by the word it means to rule over. So like in Sanskritization, we studied about there are some people who adopted some rituals from the higher caste to become almost equal to the higher caste. So same, there were some dominant caste also. They also came up. They were people with the land right, but they were not directly involved in like landlord work. They were people who were like munshi, like yadavs, like we can say a mediator that they were trying to become. So they used to have labors from the lower caste. Lower caste are sudras and vaishyas. And untouchable people means in that also there are so many subcaste and also untouchable people were there, and they were making the making this labor to level the land so that they can produce good agriculture food. Once they get land right, they requires considerable economic power. So once they get some land rights, they become automatically powerful and they try to hire people from the lower caste and become and act like a boss or a supervisor. So these intermediate castes become the dominant caste in the countryside and played a decisive role in regional politics and agri-economics. So these people mostly their occupation, this caste occupation was about agriculture. So these people they started taking part in the regional political things and they try to come up with agriculture economic, try to help the uplift the agriculture sector and wanted to gain some monetary or the financial support from this agriculture. So if you talk about who are these, so there are some examples that have been given in this is our Yadavs from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, the Reddys and Kamans from Andhra Pradesh, the Marathas from Maharashtra, the Jats of Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, Uttar Pradesh, and the Patidars of Gujarat. So the second factors in the social institution is about the tribes. So what does a tribe means? Tribes is a modern term for communities that are very old, being among the oldest in habitations and subconsistent con- contains. Tribe in India has generally been defined in terms of what they were not. They were communities that did not practice a religion with a written text. Okay, so here tribes modern thing has been divided. It is a very older than the people who started to do the caste system, I think so. But in India, the caste is always, sorry, the tribe is not always defined in the way of religion, way of what they are defined as. Okay, so what they actually look is not from what their origin or their culture is. So they don't follow any religion that has a written text. They do not have a status or political form of normal kind. They do not sha- shape sharp class division. So they do not have sharp class division like this is what Brahmins are, this is what Kshatriyas are, this is not Vaishyas are, this is not Sudras are. So this they don't have this kind of class division in them. So they do not have caste and were neither Hindus or the peasants. So they were not falling in the most of that category that Hindus or they were not farmers also. So they were divided into trades. The first one was permanent trades and the second was acquired trades. So the permanent trades, if you talk about the permanent trades in India, so there are 85% of the tribal population living in middle India, stretching from Gujarat and Rajasthan in the west to West Bengal and Odisha in the east, with mm, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and part of Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh. The remaining 15, out of which 11% is in the northeast states, leaving only 3% in the rest of the country. So, if we look at the share of the tribes in the state population, the northeast has the highest concentration. The ecological habitat covers include hills, mountain, rural plain, urban industry area. In terms of language, they are divided into four categories: Indo-Aryans, Dravinas, Dravina, Dravidian, Asserti, Tibeto-Burman. In terms of size, the biggest tribe are the Gondas, Bhil, Bodas, and Mundas. According to Census 2011, it is 88.6% of the population, or about 104 million tribe people are there in India. If you talk about the acquired tribes, there are they are classified into two main category: mode of living and extent of incorporative into Hindu society, a combination of two. Their mode of living of these tribes depending upon the uh, occupation they perform, like fishermen, food gatherers, hunters, shift agriculture. Doing shift agriculture, they were peasants, plantation, and industrial workers.